About a week ago or so, U.S. grocery store chain Kroger issued a press release breathlessly touting their new, quote, perfect sandwich making guide. This guide, once you subtract all the links to products available to buy from Kroger stores, boils down to the following steps. 1. Choose your base. That's the bread in case you're wondering. 2. Pick your protein, just like Chipotle. 3. Add your cheese. 4. Pile on the veggies, which you might also call roughage. And 5. Finish with condiments, by which they mean a sauce. Congratulations, Kroger, you just invented roll for sandwich, but the boring version without wild magic. And I'm sure that here on the short-form sandwich video side of the internet, I don't have to tell any of you what roll for sandwich is. And you are probably aware that Jake has a roll for sandwich cookbook coming out next month. Some of you are even lucky enough to have a signed copy in your hands already. I have not received a physical copy of the book, but the publisher asked me to review it ahead of its release, so I did get a look at an online galley recently. And I'm happy to report that it's a beautiful book, well photographed and organized, with supplementary material explaining some of the role-playing terminology that informs the mechanics of the show, and a few paragraphs accompanying each recipe talking about what flavors evoke and why they might work together. Or not, as the book not only includes recipes from each of Jake's favorite sandwiches from the show, those solid 10s, but also the almost there sandwiches, those that worked but for one fatal flaw, some of the stranger creations that Dice have conjured during the first several iterations of the show, and the most foul, awful, jarring sandwiches he's experienced along the way. It's an entertaining read, even if you never make a single recipe from the book. Longtime viewers will know that I have a series called Troll for Sandwich, in which I have recreated all of the sandwiches that Jake rated a 10, and one or two that came up a bit short. Now, I tried to come up with a compelling story of my own to tell about each of these creations. However, my takes on these sandwiches, well, it's like this. I remember once when I was in my 20s and I was under the influence of something or other. I found myself mesmerized by the beauty of a wood panel wall in someone's basement. The wavy, organic lines of the wood grain spoke to me, seemingly expanding and contracting in time with my own breaths. So to capture that moment for posterity, I took a Polaroid photograph of the wall. Once it developed, a few minutes later, I looked at it, and none of the magic of that wood grain wall was in it. So I set that photograph down on a wooden table, and I took a Polaroid of the Polaroid to remind myself that Polaroid pictures are not the same thing as having an experience. And my versions of Jake's sandwiches are kind of like that first Polaroid, a copy of a copy, separated from the original sandwich by the filters of Jake's video and then my own brain's interpretation. That makes my stories about these sandwiches like the Polaroid of the Polaroid, a copy of a copy of a copy with diminishing returns. There's a hopefulness in the attempt when I try to recapture the magic of the sandwich that Jake described. But then there's a kind of resignation, almost a cynicism in the descriptions I give, because they can't help but fall short of the way that Jake describes them. Because, here's the thing about randomly generated sandwiches. It's a brilliant idea, don't get me wrong, but it wouldn't work nearly as well as it does if Jake wasn't such a good storyteller. There are 100 other things that go into making the show a success. Jake's attention to production and his background studying television production, the research he does about ingredients, the way he's continued to change the formula in ways that raise the stakes and make them more entertaining, his willingness to include bizarre ingredients, and, when the dice go against him, to take one for the team. But none of it would come together the way it does if Jake wasn't, at core, able to craft compelling narratives around what boils down to rolling some dice and making a sandwich. Anyway, as I was reading, I realized there was a 10 out of 10 sandwich Jake made last year that I had taken notes on and then completely forgotten about. I, apparently, owe the world a Troll for Sandwich episode. This one, from October of 2024, he named the Pure Dead Brilliant. It starts with Aberdeen butteries. A buttery is a baked good that straddles the uncanny chasm between an American-style biscuit and a laminated pastry like a croissant. It looks a lot like the last few mutant biscuits in a batch when you've cut out all the good round ones and you're kind of patting together scraps of dough to try and squeeze out a few more. But it's got that flaky, blistery, layered look you get with a laminated pastry. To these flaky, laminated hunks of bread that want to separate themselves into layers with every stroke of the knife, we will be adding Scottish-style black pudding, a sausage of cow's blood, pork fat, onions, and steel-cut oats, crisply pan-fried and richly aromatic. Goat cheese with honey on the other side, tart and sweet, earthy and floral. Atop the black pudding, a neatly stacked but towering pile of thinly sliced discs of cucumber, crisp and fresh. A good sprinkling of Maldon sea salt to help the flavors pop, and then honey mustard to finish it off, sharp and sweet. As for the taste, at first I didn't get it. It's really not uncommon in my experience for me to be less enthusiastic about Jake's 10.0 sandwiches than he is. Context is king, after all, and a big piece of context I'm missing is all the 2.3 sandwiches Jake's had to slog through to get to the good ones. But on the second bite, a bite with a bit more of that honey goat cheese, I started to see it. Maybe a drizzle of extra honey would help, or a better honey mustard, a sweeter one than the generic store brand I ended up picking. This sandwich is hitting most of the notes I want. That universal combination of sausage and mustard that just works. The crisp freshness of the cucumber enhanced by the sea salt, offsetting the earthy funk of the blood sausage. That creamy, tart goat cheese, the glue binding everything together. The sweetness of its honey almost balancing the pungency of the mustard. Jake has certainly eaten enough bad sandwiches for one lifetime. The dice can be fickle after all. But he also knows what makes a good one. And he's put together a great collection of sandwich recipes that are surprising precisely because of the unpredictability, the chaos inherent to the dice rolls. I genuinely think this is a fun book for a sandwich enthusiast, and I can't wait to get my hands on the copy I pre-ordered when Jake first announced it. It will definitely have a place of honor on my shelves.